Endometriosis is always a feature in my relationships because it impacts your intimacy.
If we have deep penetrative sex, it feels like someone is stabbing me on the inside with a knife.
It's embarrassing, it's horrible, I feel inadequate as a woman, I guess.
Been in pain for like days afterwards, and I would bleed for about a week afterwards, maybe 2.
Sometimes we've gone a month or so without having sex because, as well as the pain, I just don't want to have sex. And at 22, that's not normal.
It sort of has gotten to the point where I think, what's the point of having sex? Because it hurts.
I guess it depends more on, like for example, position, because obviously when you've got the adhesions in a particular part, then and you touch on it, and then that's when it's painful.
If I don't have good pelvic physio, I can't have sex. It's plain and simple.
It impacts the relationship because they don't understand what you're going through.
And sometimes I just really don't want to be touched because everything hurts. And the last thing I want to think about is having sex. I guess I'm just really lucky that he's quite understanding.
We're more distant, which is unfortunate, and it's hard. I'm going to start crying now.
It's made us very close, but I feel quite guilty sometimes. Just how sad he must be sometimes.
He probably doesn't want to say the wrong thing and I don't want to say the wrong thing, so we just don't talk about it.
I've had one relationship break down primarily because of the endo.
It was about 2 years in that the abuse started, regardless of what endometriosis causes me, whatever the symptoms are, that I am not my disease, and it is not a grounds on which to punish or mistreat me.
I'm so grateful that my fiancé understands that and he doesn't push me into having sex.
A lot of times your partner wants to fix your problem and they can't, so they just don't do anything. They don't really know what to do.
And I think the key thing is getting past this idea that penetrative vaginal sex is all that there is to sex and intimacy. And I think if you can remove that pressure from people and you can look at intimacy and physical contact in a different way, it makes a very big difference.
So my talk today is on sex, intimacy and endo. I am very used to talking about sex. I do it all the time. I'm very comfortable with the topic, but I do recognise that my clients and maybe some of you are not as comfortable, so I promise I'll be as respectful and gentle as I can. When I'm talking to clients, really I have to start with a baseline question, and that question is really, I'm going to encourage all of you to get involved here and do a little self-reflection with me for the first part of my presentation, then we'll get into some hints and tips. So I really want you to have a think about some of these questions and how they apply to yourself. The first question for me, I say to clients, how do you see yourself as a sexual being? Probably not a question you've pondered all that often, but it can be very complex or it can be very simple. And the reason why I ask this question is because it creates a picture of how you think and feel about sex and intimacy. So I'll help you along here a little bit. So, do you identify, and I'm asking the partners to think about this question as well, do you identify as a woman? Do you feel like a woman or do you feel like a man? Do you know your orientation completely? I know that I identify as heterosexual. I think my bi-curious days are over. But, where are you sitting on that sort of spectrum? Do you know what turns you on? Do you know where you like to be touched? Do you know where your erogenous zones are? Do you know that your sexuality waxes and wanes depending on what's happened? Your sexual desire waxes and wanes depending on what's happening in your life. There's a whole different things that we know about ourselves that make up how you identify as a sexual being. So when I meet clients and they're really struggling to answer that question, that tells me there's been some interruptions along the way of their development. So when we're young and we're starting to experience symptoms of endometriosis or other pelvic pain issues, we start to have interruptions. So we may not be willing to go out and experiment with flirtation. We may not want to self-soothe and self-pleasure with masturbation. And I can guarantee you the women that I see with sexual dysfunctions never learn to masturbate. It's crucial. So as far as how do you see yourself as a sexual being, where do you sit with that? Because that also determines whether or not you own it. And desire is about owning the wanting. And it's key. So where do you sit with that? Do you own it? Or, as when I speak to women, do you feel like a sexual object? A vessel for someone else's gratification? And so when you're feeling like a sexual object, that's not very sexy. It's not very arousing. So then we can start with a bit of therapy, and we can start with new concepts and new ways of seeing things and new ways of thinking about things. Very important. The other question I'm going to pose to you today, what meaning does sex and intimacy have for your life? Does sex mean I can have a baby? Does sex get me into a relationship? Do I have to have sex to stay in a relationship? Or does sex bring me pleasure and joy? Or is it a bit of everything? Probably. Or does sex mean fear for me? Because meaning is important, and we've heard a bit about it today already. The more meaning we attribute to something, the more we're likely to invest in it. The more motivated we are to look at it and work with it. So if sex and intimacy doesn't mean a lot to you, probably not going to change much. And how do we attribute meaning? Well, it's really our values. What values do we have? What are our core beliefs around sex and intimacy? Where did they come from? Did they come from your mum and dad? Probably. Did they come from the culture that you live in? Did they come from, what have you taken from society? Are we all supposed to be having sex up against bookcases like they are in Hollywood? You know, what do you take? What values do you take? But most importantly, what's your lived experience? And Meredith, I think, spoke about my analogy that I used before about your hand on the hot stove. And it's very true. When you put your hand on the hot stove and the brain tells you never ever do that again, you go, thanks brain, I trust you, I'm not going to do that again, so we don't. And then you experience cramping or you have experienced painful sex and you trust the brain. And so you start to shut down. But then this conflict starts with your heart. And you're going, but I really want to touch the stove. And the brain's going, don't touch that stove. And you're going, oh, but I really want to don't touch that stove. And you go, but I have to touch the stove. It'll make me feel better. Maybe this time it'll be different. And then your brain goes, you know what? You're not listening. So I'm going to make you not like the stove. And I'm going to make you stop thinking about the stove. So we really have to, in therapy, start telling the brain, thanks, brain, but I don't need you to protect me with this. I'm going to take back and I'm going to own my sexuality. So what does sex and intimacy mean to you? And if I touch on something today that you have a knee-jerk reaction to, of perhaps disgust or fear, sit with that for a second and go, geez, where did that come from? Where did I learn that? I'm just encouraging you to self-reflect a little bit. The other question, and the last one of the questions, is really, what do I want to be different? You know, I've had a chat to some of the ladies during the breaks, and I hear a lot of women wanting things to be different, but not knowing how. How do we get there? And a way to start that process of change is really, what do I want to keep? Because there's a lot of stuff that's working, that's going well. We want to keep that stuff. You know, you're loyal, you're loving, you're driven, you're motivated, you don't give up. You've got a lot to offer. We keep that stuff. What do we want to give away? Maybe you want to give away the fear that you feel when you see desire in your partner's eyes. Maybe you want to give away the social expectations that you've placed on yourself of what your sex life should be like, and if I'm not going to reach that, well, then I'm not going to try. You know, maybe you want to give away your reaction to fear. So when you're happy to give something away, you're making space for something else. So what do you want to make space for? What do you want to bring into your life? Is it that you want to feel that when my partner looks at me with desire, I'm happy about that and I'm excited that my partner still desires me? Do I want to give away the thought that I need to be having sex against a bookcase like in Hollywood? Or maybe I'm going to work out with my partner what works for us. That may mean a myriad of things. You know, I've negotiated open relationships with couples before, to be extreme. But there's lots and lots of different ways and sexual styles that you can have with your partner. So how can we do this? Please, 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 partners and sufferers with endometriosis, be kind to yourselves. I say to partners all the time, don't crush your sexuality. Don't feel like you have to say goodbye to it. Foster it. Foster your sexuality. Hold on to it. You don't have to give it away. You know, sufferers with endo, be care. I see so many ladies where they've come to me and they've said, I'm overcompensating in my relationship because I feel so guilty and so sad that I don't want my partner to touch me. I don't want to have sex. And then we start talking about self-care and all they're hearing is be selfish, be selfish, be selfish. And that's not what I'm asking you to do. It's not about being selfish. If you don't look after yourself, you're going to burn out. A lot of women come to me as well and say because of those interruptions in their development and they don't have that sexual being identity, they say, I feel like when I was growing up, I was on the outside looking at everybody else saying, I don't get it. I don't understand what it's all about. What's the point? Self-care, whatever that means for you, getting a pedicure, whatever it might be, I don't know. But make sure that you're doing self-care. Communicate with your partners. And this is one of the most crucial things. I know it's the fluffy side of stuff, but it's really crucial. We want to nurture trust and commitment with our partners. We want to know that when we reach out to our partners emotionally and physically, that they will reach back, that they will take our hands and say, I care, I'm here for you. Even if it's not tonight, that's okay, it'll be another time. We want to nurture trust and commitment so we can feel secure in that relationship. That means not turning away from each other. We've got couples who come in and I might as well have them in a boxing ring because they're in opposite end of the corner and they're facing the other way. We want to start turning back around and turning towards each other and trusting that we can do that. We want to avoid situations where we've gone into our own private worlds and we do this with our thoughts. And we're thinking all the time. Our anxiety is huge. You know, managing anxiety and endometriosis is a big part of what I do. But we're in our private worlds and we're having our thoughts about our partners. God, I hope it's been 2 weeks. I haven't done anything. I'm going to have to do something. Otherwise, he's going to get upset or she's going to get upset. And the partner's going, oh, God, I really feel like I want to be intimate, but I don't want to ask because I can't own this. I don't own this. It's not my thing. And so it becomes very awkward and very unsafe for us to communicate openly and honestly with our partners. So we learn techniques on how to turn towards instead of away. Mutual empathy, not sympathy. Empathy means you can stand in someone else's shoes for a second and try and understand what they're going through. You don't have to sympathise with them, but you empathise with how difficult that must be. And we want to be able to make sure that partners can empathise with each other and not sympathise with each other because that's not sexy either. Because that really implies that there's a victim. So sometimes we want to externalise the problem, and I encourage people to externalise endo. We want to make endo the enemy. One of the great campaigns is the Black Dog Institute because men were not comfortable using the word depression. I don't have depression. But because they've made and branded the black dog, you know, you can have a conversation with a guy who has depression and he'll go, oh yeah, the black dog's around today. And it sort of externalises the problem. You want to make endo the enemy, not your partner, because they're not. So however you want to call it, I've got a lady who calls endo Dwayne. Dwayne came around today. He stayed a week, but he's bloody gone now. And she's a single lady. But yeah, if you can externalise it, instead of calling it the same thing over and over again, because believe it or not, there is such a thing as carer's fatigue. And as much as your partners love you, they do get carer's fatigue. So if you can mix it up and try and look at it, reframe it from a different angle, it always helps. The other thing is obviously to manage expectations. The expectations of the relationship and being honest about that. Again, redefining the style of your sexual relationship will help manage the expectations of that relationship. So being a sex therapist, my husband is an incredibly supportive, fantastic man. I love him to death. And he knows when he comes home and I have a look on my face and I know he'll stop and he'll look at me, and I actually caught it one day and I said, honey, we need to do some research. There it is. And that was the face I got. So what we want to do is we really want to get into the nitty-gritty of how do you experiment, how do you think outside the box as far as your sex and intimacy is concerned, and really it's about, boom, opening up your mind. So these wedges here are from a company called Liberator. And I know in the top left it talks about lift providing deeper penetration. Oh my God, I can feel the fear in some of you straight away. Okay, but what you want is the wedges are good because when you try and use pillows just squish down and really they don't do a lot at all. But what you're looking for is you want something in the form of a piece of sex furniture that's going to give you stability and it's going to give you comfort so that you can relax, so that you can actually enjoy the interaction. And as mentioned before, if you've got endo, if it's painful to lie on your stomach, don't do it. If it's painful to lie on your back, don't do it. Lie on your side. You know, think outside the box. The next thing I was going to say is arousal. Arousal is so key, and that's why it's so important to know what turns you on. Do you have an erotic brain? Is there something, can you tap into your erotic library and go, yeah, that turned me on, so that you can go from a level arousal 1 to a 10 pretty quickly, because that's what most of us have to do to reach orgasm. If you don't have an erotic library, go make one. However you can do that, whether it's through erotic reading or watching pornography or whatever it is you choose to do, to know what turns you on is so, so important. Because if you're not aroused, your vagina is not going to inflate, your cervix is not going to tilt, you're not going to lubricate, and it's going to be painful. And a lot of the times, ladies with endometriosis develop other symptoms or other issues like vaginismus. Anybody heard that? Say that 10 times fast. Vaginismus is the involuntary contraction of the pelvic floor muscle. So it's not conscious, it's unconscious, where you're not going to get anything in there, no matter how much you try, or it's very painful. So some women are experiencing pain which may not even be related to their endo. Arousal is key. That PJU is a great lubricant because it's silicone-based, not water-based, so it lasts a little longer. Any silicone-based will last a little longer than water-based lube. This magical device here, I don't know if anybody knows a silver bullet. It's a clitoral stimulator. Please don't go and spend $200 on a leaf or a ergonomically designed thing that just, it's insane what's on the market these days. You literally need a battery and a little thing like this for $16.95. And you're not putting it in, don't put it in, you're concentrating on the clitoris. A lot of women are really upset because they don't achieve vaginal orgasm. Well, welcome to the club, because 85% of us don't. So you really want to concentrate on the clitoris. Anyway, a vaginal orgasm is exactly the same. It's just that the penis is stimulating the internal part of the clitoris body that gives you a vaginal orgasm. Don't go searching for the G-spot, it doesn't exist. Give it up. So the clitoral stimulator is fantastic, especially if a lot of you are on heavy meds for pain or antidepressants, because often that's the combination, which is really lowering your ability to be sensitive or to achieve orgasm or in fact even have any sexual desire. So often I'm working with clients, we're trying to stop the protective brain, work on the emotional stuff, overcome medical barriers, but we do it. We do it. So this is a fake vagina. And so, I mean, if you can't, like nobody, I came through airport, no problem. It doesn't show up on any scans. You can, there's different brands of these things. Fleshlight is probably top of the range, and internally it's textured, it's nice and soft silicone. And what we're doing, what I'm suggesting to you all with an open brain, is to be able to incorporate something like this into your sex life. And I had a woman in my office on Wednesday, such a lovely lady, and she'd read an article where I'd mentioned this, and she came in specifically for that, because she said to me, my husband's 6'6", and my thighs and my legs are in agony after trying to, because she's on her back, trying to keep him off her, trying to manage any kind of penetration. The fear that she has around that penetration is huge. And so she said the thought of not knowing I don't have to worry about penetration was such a relief, and she said it would be life-changing for her. So what you can do with this particular, with one of these things, is if you're lying missionary position, you can put it between your legs, cross your legs, husband on top of you, and he can penetrate while you're still stimulating your clitoris, okay? Another great position, as my husband found, was this way. So you're lying on your side because you're trying to avoid pain on the front or the back. You're lying spoon, a nice romantic position. I can see a lady grimacing at the back there. But you're spooning, he's penetrating you from behind while he can reach over and stimulate your clitoris, okay? This is what I'm talking about, thinking outside the box. So, this is Betty. But there's lots of different brands, and you also don't need to spend, I think this was $10 from China. This is a very cheapy version of that, so you don't have to spend a lot of money on that either. Look, the last sort of concept that I'm going to encourage you to really think about, ladies, is to reconnect with your body in a positive way. And it doesn't have to be in a sexual way, but just start somewhere. I talk to women all the time who've completely disassociated from their nether regions or their pelvic area, don't want to know, have no connection with it, but the rest of your body's really doing a pretty good job. So there's something that I called 5 senses, the 5 senses mindfulness. And on a daily basis, you want to connect with your body a few seconds a day using one of those senses. So you want to look at taste. Who likes a bit of chocolate? You want to swirl it around in your mouth. You want to really taste it, feel the texture, just for 5 to 10 seconds, and then swallow it down. All right? Stop and taste something mindfully and say, hey, thanks, body. Thanks, body, for that. I really appreciate that. The other thing is smell. Touch is so important because, look, we all know how prem babies respond to skin touch. Yeah? We all know within disabilities there's a concept called skin hunger, because people with disabilities, the only time they get touched is when they're changing clothes or have a medical intervention. And skin hunger is something that we do crave. So touch is a fantastic thing. And mix it up. Try a little feather work. Try a hairbrush. The texture of a hairbrush is really good. Enjoy a shower. Take your time. 5 seconds. Feel the water going down. Feel the temperature. Really be in your body. Because too many women are trying to have sex in their heads and it's not working because your anxiety is taking over. Be in your body. Hear something that you enjoy, music or a sexy whisper. See some things that you like. So really, take home points. Be kind to yourself. Communicate with your partner. Experiment, and reconnect with your body. Thank you very much.